We might be on introduction part 37. We don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
No, we can't do that. Bisexual lighting.
You're listening and you have thoughts and you want to share them with us. And we love that.
Oh, sure. Put me on the spot. Why don't you?
Susie sells seashells by the seashore.
No, she doesn't.
Because it's going to be great. I think you're going to enjoy the heck out of it. Welcome, everybody, to the Right Out Loud podcast. I'm Matt Kassem, and this is the lovely, the luxurious, the amazing, the wonderful, the incredible Christina.
Woohoo!
How are you, my darling?
I am doing good, surprisingly. It's hot.
Is it?
It's too hot.
Well, my friends, we are here today to talk a little bit about book to screen, the differences, the challenges, the ways stories develop and unfold differently when it's a book versus a screen. So what do you think about that topic?
It is one of my favorites because I love to trash movies that totally missed the mark. But I switched it up again. I really kind of went back in my catalog and said, what movies and or TV were actually better than the books? Because I really feel like Heartstopper is one of those.
Mm-hmm.
One of those that the book was great, and then you just added some more greatness on top of that for the show. So there are a ton of books out there that you can say, well, the book still exists if the movie didn't work out for you.
True.
Yeah, that's actually Nora Roberts actually says it best when, people are like, oh my God, they ruined the book. She's like, the book is still there. Go read the book. You don't have to see the movie. I do feel that there's a purpose for movies and TV that are developed from previous work. It's a chance for people that don't read, and there's no shame in that, but that don't read can still enjoy, what it is. The Last of Us actually is one of those because I was not introduced to the game. I'm not a video gamer. I haven't played games since the Atari 5200. Unless it's in an arcade, and that was back in the 80s, so that's still a long time ago. But
Ms. Pac-Man,
that's exactly right. That's probably the last video game I played. But what I'm saying is that there is always going to be an audience for previously published work. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, it is going to make the book hit the bestseller list again, give the author some really great, checks coming in.
Sure.
So there's a purpose. There's absolutely 100% a purpose. So I'm not one of those that is like, oh my God, they totally ruined it. No, they didn't. The book still exists. It's still there. You can go read it anytime.
The movie might be different, but that's okay.
Yes. And it introduces a new audience.
Sure.
I was one of those that was dragged to see Twilight on the big screen. Kicking and screaming, but then walked out of the theater going, where's the closest bookstore? So, I think there's a real purpose. There is a real purpose. So today we're going to talk about not just those purposes, but, how books can be made better, how books can lose something as they go to screen, how it better develops the story, better develops characters, gets more insight, those sorts of things.
Do you think that for Heartstopper in particular, do you think that it was easier for the show to improve upon the book, given that it was a graphic novel versus a book that is just pure text?
Absolutely. I mean, there is no question. If you were going to do a screenplay from a novel, there is so much more that you have to look at and figure out, and what are the actions, what needs to happen. Alice was lucky because she had that already figured out. She still had to figure it out, but she figured it out while she was writing the comic, and the comic came out over time. So it wasn't like she had to sit there and like, okay, I'm going to write an entire graphic novel in, a
Sure.
couple of weeks here. She had months, perhaps years, that she was working on this stuff. So yeah, so she had already things set, knowing that, okay, this is the action here. The things that she would really have to do is actually figure out, will this work on the screen? And what do I need to change it? The other thing she can think about too is, I really didn't have much for this character. And what more can I give them? What more depth can we go into?
Yep.
So I saw that piece as the real key to why this turned, in my mind, again, I absolutely love the source material, the comics. She's releasing the new stuff now, and I'm, there on the 1st and the 11th and the 21st, and, catching up on everything that way. But also, there is so much more depth and more things to talk about when you talk about the TV series, because there is
Sure.
more that you can do. There's more development with everything.
Yep.
And there's also some things that, a couple of major things that she changed that I'm going to talk about when we start to break down stuff. But the one thing I did want to bring up, and I know that you said you had some things that didn't work from book to screen in your mind. Well, I actually went back and thought about books, movies that I've read and seen. So everything here that I have written down is all stuff that I've read the source material and, seen the production of. Several of them came from one book, Stephen King's Different Seasons, which had The Body, which is AKA Stand By Me. And then there was Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, which became The Shawshank Redemption, both of which were short stories. From book to screen, the books were good, but because they were short stories, they weren't as developed, especially for Stephen King. He's, got a mouth on him. So in my mind, the movies were as good, if not a little better, because they were, again, further developed. There were more aspects to it that you didn't have in the short story. Another one that came to mind was Brokeback Mountain. The original source material, again, was a short story that there were so many things missing in development that I actually would make the argument that, like, when you read the short story, it almost feels half done.
Yes.
Like, it feels like there's stuff missing.
Yep.
Whereas, the movie is much more full. The one thing that I can't quite say the movie was better, but the movie was damn good. And it is still one of, if not the favorite movie of mine. And that is The Princess Bride. But the book is also in my top books of all time. And the book is, oh my God, there's so much in the book that's not in the movie. So, and it is so good. And there's stuff that is just hilarious. And like this chapter that you didn't know existed. And, I mean, it's very comically done. Very tongue in cheek. And William Goldman, man, he was just not only a great novelist, great storyteller, great script writer, screenplay writer. He is just magical, and I'm just crushed that he is gone and he can't ever finish Buttercup's Baby. Yes, we only got a couple chapters of that one before, so I'm hoping they find the lost manuscript somewhere.
Yeah.
What about you? What are some that you said, kind of failed in your eyes going from book to screen?
I don't know about failed. I think there was just, certain ones, like everybody has their collection of books that they really loved, and then, the movie
Yes.
maybe takes it in a slightly different direction, or leaves significant portions out that you really connected with as the reader, that you look at the movie and go, oh, that was I was really hoping to see that. And for whatever reason, length or, creative direction, whatever, they decided to leave it out. But like, I think for me, one thing I can think of for sure is Memoirs of a Geisha.
Oh,
That
yeah.
that book was so incredibly vivid and just a page turner from beginning to end. Like the development of all of the characters in that book left you just wanting more. And it was such a well written story that when you got to the movie, while it was visually stunning, there was a lot that was just like, hmm, okay. Like they wanted to make it come to life, but they didn't breathe the same life into the characters in my eyes.
What do you think they could have done?
I don't know. That's a hard one because I understand that you like books are always going to have this much material, right? Out a football length worth of material. And you have to
Yeah.
figure out how to best condense it in a way that's going to make sense for the audience. It's going to move the story along and not lose the core pieces of it, right? So I don't know. I just think if they would have not focused so much on the visual imagery, because that's where they really spent a lot of their time too,
Gotcha.
was making it more of a
Yeah.
visual like smorgasbord, and
Yeah.
just focus on the actual story and still bring some of that in there. Like it was beautiful, it was stunning, but it just didn't have the same kick that the book did. I went back to the book immediately after the movie
Yeah.
and was like, let
And
me read this again because I just need my story
yeah.
back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, it's interesting because sometimes it's the way the story is told
mhm,
in the novel or short story or whatever the source material is that just doesn't translate.
mhm.
Yeah, I have not read Memoirs of a Geisha and I have not seen the movie,
Mm.
so that's one I cannot comment on
Book is
at
so good.
all.
It's so
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, but the other ones for me, I think, are just little things like here and there. So, like when you think about Harry Potter, for example,
yeah,
just the biggest thing that comes to mind is Hermione was
yeah.
a little Miss Know It All, in the movie, and very much, kind of a goody two shoes. Like she wanted to follow all the rules. She was dark in the books, like dark,
You
dark,
think?
dark. Oh yes, she was dark. And I would have liked to see a little bit more of that, I think, because she almost kind of had this anti-hero feel to her.
Yeah.
So
I honestly don't remember. I read the books as they came out, so I mean, I've read them, so long ago, but I don't remember feeling like Hermione was that dark, but maybe it came off as dark as how do I want to say it? Like, she was a girl slash young woman
mhm,
who knew what she wanted and what she wanted out of people and was not afraid to say anything.
mhm,
So, very much a forward thinking young lady.
mhm. But just
So,
yeah, there's just some interesting things with her that, like, I'm trying to find the one. There's one like solid example that shows you exactly where it was. Just the way that she's portrayed in the books, like she has this darker side to her. There's a scene where she's talking about how to handle pixies, and like she just was basically like in the books, like straight up murdering them.
yeah, yeah,
And it was just like, wow. Where in the book, in the movie, she wasn't like that at all. She was very strong. She was
yeah.
very powerful, but there was just
Now,
this little darker side, which I think was harder to come
yeah,
through.
not that I want to get too far off topic because we do have to
No,
get
you're
back to
good.
Heartstopper, but no, I know what you're talking about. And I often in my mind put that as that is her muggleness. Like she's got one foot in the magical world and
Mhm,
one foot in the human one. And she was the only one that was that way in the stories. So the only main character. So um the others didn't have the same perspective. So she didn't grow up handling pixies.
sure.
So, does she really care about them? In the way that other people did. So I think I wonder if I more interpreted that as part of her muggleness that wasn't quite. So I didn't see it as dark. I just saw it again as forthright and that part of the know-it-all that just knows what they want and they're not afraid to say what they think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's get back to Heartstopper though.
Heartstopper.
This
Yep.
was just really a way for me to say, here's what's
You
different for
just wanted to
me.
talk about Harry Potter.
Screen to book to screen to book. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So we got
No,
a little off topic, but that's okay. Work. I mean, it wasn't off topic. It was just off
yeah,
off what we're trying
yes,
to focus on, which is
yes.
Heartstopper.
Heartstopper. So, okay. So one thing I want to start with the book to screen, is I, whoever the casting director is for this show is so on point that I want to write their name down to see what else they've done, to see what else I can actually look at, because this person is a genius.
Yeah.
Absolute genius. I can't even say, like, shot by shot with the characters next to each other, were they different.
Right.
Even the Isaac Alad, if you really kind of look at the two, you can kind of see, oh, Isaac looks a little bit like he could be an insert here for Alad. So, but the rest of them, I mean, casting is just spot on. Like, I don't even know, like, talk about conjuring. Harry Potter must have had some sort of magic on the casting director to find the exact replicas of the characters.
Oh yeah.
And even some of the personalities of the actors seem to fit, just how they are, just how they act, like little idiosyncrasies from them. So, like, Tao is one in particular, even though there's a huge height difference. But it's the personality that I'm talking about. Yeah, that goofiness, that definite strangeness. So absolute perfect casting as far as book to screen. I do feel like Alice added so much more. And one of the reasons why I brought up The Princess Bride is because both of these things are cases of the source material was also the person who wrote the screenplay. William Goldman wrote the book and the screenplay for Princess Bride. Alice did, both the comic book and the screenplays here.
Sure.
So, and in both cases, they added and subtracted almost what was, necessary. Some of the best points of Princess Bride were definitely like, how do you explain that a chapter was missing? Because you're reading a book, you can explain that. In the movie, you can't explain that there's a chapter missing. So for Alice, though, I don't know that she changed or left that much out. I think more so what she did was add a more fullness to not just the characters, but the story, everything that was going on, she added depth to, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes back to our, my question earlier about, does it make a difference that it's not a graphic novel to show versus book to show, right? Because the graphic novel, you have so much left to interpretation in the way that it's displayed, and the show itself you can actually build and spend more time on. And I think for her, like, it gave her a chance to refine a little bit about what the graphic novel was trying to portray and have a little bit of finesse with it.
Yeah. And this is actually one of the greatest things. And again, this would be a question for Alice. Alice, sometime come on the podcast and answer some of these questions that we're really dying to know. I do believe she changed some things that she would have liked to have done in the beginning, but maybe didn't think about it or just didn't. I don't know. I'm just going to say didn't know enough about writing at that point to be wise enough to do that, or didn't think about it until later. One of the things is, and let's see if you caught this, the book to screen was different. Book was Charlie gets its opening. I'm talking
Hmm.
about the opening. So in the book, Charlie comes to school and he's meeting Ben.
Hmm.
And we actually see Ben.
Hmm.
In the screen, we actually don't see Ben until after Nick and Charlie meet. So the
Hmm.
first person that you actually see Charlie with in the show is Nick. And I think she did that on purpose
Hmm.
because this whole time you don't know who this guy Ben is. And you know what? Quite frankly, he's not important.
He's not. Yeah.
The important person is Nick. And one of the things I tell a lot of my specifically new clients that I'm working with, that where does the story start? Start there. You
Hmm.
don't need all this other stuff. If that's not the main meat of the story, get to the main meat of the story. So the main meat of the story here is Nick and Charlie meet.
Hmm.
It has nothing to do with Ben other than Ben is that precipitous of here is Nick, here is Ben.
That contrast.
That contrast, let
Hmm.
the audience see. But yeah, we see Nick first in the show, but in the book we meet Ben first.
Hmm. I
So
didn't catch that. That's interesting.
yes. And I suspect that Alice did that on purpose because as a literary device, it actually works better.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think the
Again,
show,
refining and finessing,
yeah,
like we
refining
talked
and
about, right?
finessing
Yep.
and things that she might have missed out on. I definitely think that it's probably a situation where, she just didn't think of it and didn't do it on purpose in that way in the comic, but in the show I think I really did feel like she did it purposefully.
Well, I think that goes hand in hand then with the fact, like you and I talked beforehand when I had missed the what I perceived was the actual, quote unquote assault part,
Yes.
was actually the part that Alice in the show changed out for him just meeting him in the hallway and kind of pretending like he
Right.
didn't know him and, who are you? Why are you talking to me? Kind of thing.
Yes.
Which again goes to just sort of making him this contrast and this not as important of a character
Yeah,
because you want to keep the focus on Nick.
he
So that's
is
true.
really there for a
Hmm.
purpose to show a mirror image to Nick of who's the better boyfriend.
This is bad. This is good.
Exactly.
You don't want this. You want
Yes.
this.
Yes. Now, one thing I will say that I think she did better in the book to screen was Nick's friends.
Mm.
Cy, Christian, the name of the third one eludes me right now. Um, I think she did it better in the book. They were a little more developed. They were a little more invested in Nick and Charlie's relationship.
Hmm.
And, they were clued in much earlier in the show. They were more of again, more of a device
Hmm.
than characters, than developed characters. They were there to put different kinds of roadblocks and conflicts into the story.
Sure.
More specifically, when they're all in the dressing room or locker room, sorry. I don't know, dressing room,
It works. It works.
you know,
Yeah.
plays and things like that. Stuff that I do is in a dressing room, not a
It
locker
is.
room.
It is.
Anyway, in the locker room talk when they're talking about Harry's party and Tara's gonna be there
Mhm.
and there's the Imogen aspect in the show. And I think it's again, they're really not named in the show, but I think it's Christian who says he's got two proper girls and he's, not even, that's more of a device to show the discomfort between Nick and Charlie, to show the tension between them.
That was
Um,
Harry, I think, actually, too.
yeah,
I think it was
yeah.
Harry. Yeah.
Harry in there too. Yeah. So it's a matter of in the books they had more purpose to them than a literary one. They
Hmm.
were more, developed in that way.
Yeah.
I also think in the show, Tori L. Tao, the Isaac we'll call it Isaac slash Alad, um, aspects in the books weren't as developed
Mm-hmm.
as the TV show did. So the
Right.
TV show went further in developing. Yes, Alad has his own book and Tori has her own book. But as far as Heartstopper is concerned, the TV show, drew from, Tori's source material for sure,
Mm.
from Solitaire. So yeah, so I think there was more character development for the main characters and less character development for Nick's friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I agree with that.
I think in season 2 though, I wonder if we'll, see a little bit more.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that whole piece plays out, knowing what the focus is for the books without doing any spoilers or getting into that. But it will be interesting to see kind of how much more finessing Alice does to the
Yeah.
screen in those, right? Because those can be a
Yeah.
very challenging
Yes.
topic. If you know, you
And
know.
what could, like, I try to think what more could be added. And I think that's what the magic of the book to screen here is for Alice, is she added so much more that if I had just read the books, I never would have thought of, all of these things that she added.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I think the TV show did really, really well that surprised me were the, like, what she calls in the screenplay the Heartstopper moments,
Mm-hmm.
where the leaves are coming across, or
Mm-hmm.
the little sparks when Nick is thinking about
Yes.
holding Charlie's hand, the dream sequences where Charlie is imagining Nick is declaring his love for him, and then he says, you want to try out for rugby. Those, I think, were things that you would think, okay, well, the book to screen isn't going to get that. It's not going to translate well. But it actually really did, and it really
Mm-hmm.
worked for the show.
Yeah, what I think was interesting though too was like we were just talking about the fact that he has the little dream sequences within the show,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot about like him wanting him to have the dream sequence, like, oh yes, I'm gay, and I'm in love with you too, and all
Yes.
of that. But then, yeah, I don't think it's in the book. So okay, I think I'm okay. I think, but it was also a quick peruse through all of the many pages, so I might have missed it. But anyway, I think it was almost used exactly the opposite way in the show, in that in the show Nick doesn't have the same, it's not the, oh yes, I'm actually gay and I love you and I want to be with you. It goes a dark kind of ring around the screen, right?
No, you're thinking of a different sequence. You're thinking of After the Kiss. After the Kiss, it goes dark.
There's a
When
couple of them though. Yeah.
Charlie is brushing his teeth, and then he's thinking back to the kiss, and Nick saying, "No, I don't. No, no, I not that way." But he actually does in the sequence where Nick says, "I wanted to ask you something," and it does go all pink and flowery, and says,
Yes,
"I'm
yes,
gay,
that was
and
there. Yeah.
I'm in love with you
Okay.
too." Yes,
But there was the one where they were sitting in whatever they call homeroom,
yes,
right? Where they were sitting in
yeah,
that, and he
yeah,
he like looks at him and he's like, oh no, I'm actually straight. Like I just
yeah.
I
I
just like
just like
girls.
girls.
I don't
Yeah,
like, yeah.
yeah.
So there's two of those that he went dark.
Yes. I know the scene that you're talking about. I can't remember the context of what was happening around it, but yeah, he says, "No, I'm straight and I only like girls."
Yeah. I can only ever like
Um,
girls. I can only ever be with girls or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
But I felt like
So,
she used that differently in the show, because when I'm looking through the
oh,
book
the
piece,
so
none
the
of the
dark
darkness
stuff.
is there. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
shows, I think, a refinement of her approach to Charlie's insecurities. That he's just
yes,
imagining this, like that this can't possibly be true because
yes,
he's really got to be straight, right? Like this
yes.
cannot possibly be
Yep,
a thing that they're going to be together. Yeah.
yep, yep. I do think, again, that to me was definitely Alice really kind of going deeper. because those are more clues to what things are going to start to happen in season 2. So not to give away any spoilers, but I think she was much more conscious of putting those moments into the show. The thing is that what we have to remember, especially early on for the comics, is that she was doing it little by little. And I don't think she had fully developed the story as far as, the little moments. She knew because of Solitaire that these two were together and that a few of these things had happened. I think that is one of those things that maybe she added a couple more of those moments. I'd have to go back and look at, the book as well.
Yeah.
To make sure that they weren't in there.
Kind of pretty sure, like just through the perusal of it, it proceeds pretty quickly. And I didn't see anything that looked like that, right? And that's what kind of was looking for too. So I could have missed it. But
I know that it does happen after the kiss when he's brushing his teeth in the books, before Nick shows up at the door. So, because he's thinking back to the kiss and it's horrible. He's reliving it horribly, like this. Like clearly Charlie is reliving something that did not happen the way that Charlie thinks it happened, because, Nick getting up and going seems to be that he's rejecting Charlie. And that's why I mentioned this earlier, that in the Netflix edition of the book, of the comic, in the back is a couple of scenes from the show, and it's got the script. And they have all these Heartstopper moments, the animated stuff and all that kind of stuff. But right after the kiss, in the story, they're interrupted from somebody else, Christian, somebody, one of Nick's friends, saying that Harry's looking for you. And then when they meet up, it's Harry and everything. So in the show, it's actually Harry that's interrupting them. And as Harry is talking and, saying, that was just banter and all that, in the side notes, it says Nick isn't listening to Harry. He's made his decision. He interrupts Harry mid-sentence and then basically says, yeah, I guess I was just in a mood. And then he turns around and walks off, in search of Charlie. And I didn't get that from the show.
No.
Like when I first watched the show, and that is prior to actually reading the source material. So I came to the show first, but in the show, I never saw it as rejecting Charlie. It was more or less like, oh my gosh, I have to go head them off. I don't want them to get back here to see that Charlie and I were together. I never saw it as a rejection of Charlie and what he did in kissing Charlie. I always saw it as, I've got to head them off so they don't, see what's going on here and question. It was more about stopping questions. But according to the script, it was more like he was kind of like, what do I do? What do I do? Wait a minute, I've made a decision. And I'm going to go back to Charlie. Charlie's more important than these
idiots.
So, yeah, which I thought was really interesting. So that actually reading that really wants, like, I really want to read the entire script. Like, what else can I break down, from book to screen, simply by what is in the actual writing of the screenplay. Some more things to note that was different from the book was, in the book, I remember Charlie being kind of like, everybody loved him. And especially the rugby guys, after he started playing and he was actually good at rugby. And so in the show, he's not as good at rugby. And the guys aren't really crazy about him. Now, later in the movie theater scene afterwards, Nick and Harry's fight, in the book, again, Christian, Cy, they're kind of looking at each other, more so. And they're kind of standing in the back and really aren't sure what to do, but they're definitely not egging Harry on. Whereas in the show, I think that's not as clear.
Mhm.
And then there's a bunch of people that aren't named characters that are really kind of egging Harry on. So that was a little bit different, almost a little more dramatic for the screen.
Yeah. Well, I do think all of those things, though, come together with Alice wanting to make it, again, it just goes back to finesse, but it's her wanting to make it more relatable, right? She knows that everybody
Yeah.
in this age range that's going to be watching this show, and is
Yeah.
much more family friendly, they're going to have those insecurities. They're going to relate to those moments that much
Yes.
more easily. And by having him
Yes.
have those moments and having that interaction between Harry and that group of people, and him just, and I took it too as him just being sort of like, I'm really not here mentally, right? I'm thinking about this kiss that I just had with Charlie, and
Right.
now I got to deal with these morons,
Yes.
and I just don't know what. But I don't want to make waves. Okay, fine. Like, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just in a
Yep.
bad mood, right?
Yep.
And I don't want to walk the boat because
Yeah.
I want to draw attention to
Because
myself yet.
because the earth just moved and I
Yep.
got to figure out what this is.
Yep. I just need these guys to go away, and I don't want to make a big
Yes.
thing about it. So
Yes,
just yes, right?
exactly.
Like that's kind of how I
And
took it.
your use of the word relatable actually says it all, because that is what I think she was trying to do, was make this more relatable to what is going on in today's, world.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Yes.
I agree.
One other thing that I think the show did really well too was add the kiss prior to the kiss between Charlie and Nick, the kiss with Tara and Darcy, because I really saw that as the moment that Nick decided he would try things.
Yep.
He would take that chance.
Yep.
He saw how happy they were. That made him realize, what is important is actually the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and I'm willing to explore this.
Yep. I had the same
kind of
feeling.
gave him the kind of gave him the courage.
Yep. I had the same feeling. And I think too, when his mom made the comment to him about he's more himself around Charlie.
Yes. Yeah.
It was just prior to that whole piece. And then he goes to this party and he sees them kiss and everything else. And it just sort of like starts to connect with him, that he's like, look at how happy they are. Look at how like, oh yes, I want that. And I know where I can find it.
Yeah. And I actually wrote this down because it was really interesting. After that in the show, you see Nick grabbing Charlie's hand and let's run, and then stops and turns around and said, let's race. In the book, it's still Nick grabbing Charlie's hand, but Nick pulls his hand back and there's a moment of like, oh, I grabbed his hand. And then to cover up for it, Charlie says, let's race.
Mm-hmm.
So that was different in book to screen. And again, I kind of felt like Alice wanted to shift things a little more. It's almost as if Alice really wanted a more positive journey for Nick than a little bit less of a struggle.
Sure.
Like, let me walk this line. Although, again, him pulling his hand away, not realizing he did it, the maturity that Nick is in both the book and screen, I think he would have still kind of been like, well, I kind of wanted to grab his hand, didn't I?
Yep.
And I saw it really as a natural thing of like a subconscious thing. You're not really thinking about it. You're just doing.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge message in Heartstopper of, instead of thinking about what other people are thinking of you, you just do what comes naturally. I think that's a huge message within the Heartstopper universe.
Just be you. Do what you want. Do what makes you happy.
Yes.
As long
everyone
as
has
not hurting anyone else.
Everyone has their own journey, and they should be allowed to do what they feel comes naturally to them.
Yep.
I think that was the point of what you were talking about Nick's mom saying, you're more you, you're more yourself when Charlie is around.
Yep.
You're more natural.
Yep.
You're not putting on airs. Yeah.
And I think it was interesting too, because there's that scene where they're in the art room eating together. eating lunch together.
Yes.
And Charlie makes kind of the throwaway comment that, about Ben and how he, made them keep it a secret that they weren't seeing each other or something.
Yeah.
And then he sees Nick's face right away and goes, no.
Yep. No,
And he's holding his hand like
You're not
very
doing
tightly.
that.
He's like, that's not at all what we're doing. We're completely different. You're
Yep.
not like it. You're not at all like him.
Yeah.
And it was such a cool moment
And
to help that.
Another thing that I would love to ask Alice is, was it on purpose to take out a lot of the, I don't know what I would call it, like, I call it kind of like rumpus or flirting, like God, how many times did Nick pick up Charlie? Now, maybe they can't do that in the show because, Nick and Charlie were, more of the same size in season 1. Season 2 looks like, Nick has grown a little bit. But yeah, I missed a lot of that flirting of, again, Nick was always picking up Charlie and carrying him where he wanted him to go. And, after the rugby wins and, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I overall though, there is not one complaint about the way that she has translated this. Again, I know I've said it a million times in this podcast tonight. I can't wait to see what she has done for season 2.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I really think that she's, again, a very smart writer. And anything that she wants to correct from the book, she will do that, and she will add more depth, and she will keep it as positive experience as she can.
Yep. 100%. Well, very good. I think we've hit it. So I have a challenge for our listeners. And that is this. Your challenge for this week is to take a book and or show that you have maybe previously watched, or maybe you want to watch, maybe you've read the book, but you haven't seen the show or movie or whatever. And you're going to do a little bit of a compare and contrast. But when you're doing that, I want you to ask yourself, why? Why did they change this thing? And you cannot default to, they didn't have time to fit it in. You cannot default to, it was a different person writing the script. Like there has to be some sort of reason, and I want you to look deeper, because you'd be surprised what you might find.
And I think, adding on to that, I would challenge you to, how would you have done it differently? You got to write it.
Here.
You got to write it.
There you go. I love it. Cool. Well, that's a wrap for this week, my dear.
Yes.
As always, lovely, lovely. Thank you for being here. And thank you all for listening. We appreciate you very much. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Tell us, where can they find more of Christina?
I am at bookmatchmaker.com. And then on all social media, but mostly on Instagram. If you're a friend of the podcast, you hear me say that every single week. And there are messages at the other social medias that I probably haven't responded to. So if you want to find me at Instagram, it's at bookmatchmaker, or just give me an email, Christina@bookmatchmaker.com.
Perfect.
And where can they find you, my dear?
You can find me at Kassem, Cassem, at omg.lol for all of the links and socials and emails and things that you can find what you like to get a hold of me and see things that I'm into and things that I like and all of that jazz. So, well, that wraps it up for this week. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and we look forward to next week. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying every bit of it, but we would love to hear your feedback. Drop us an email either to matt@writeoutloudpod.com or Christina@bookmatchmaker.com. We would love to hear your thoughts. What's working, what's not working, and what do you want to hear more of? Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.